Martin, it's your turn. Popular view of the role of the Commission is that it regulates. Martin, is that right? Will it be the case of the digital single market?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's a naturally lazy individual and bureaucrat. That is my last tendency to give myself more work. So, no, I would avoid doing more regulation. And I hope this approach is somehow captured by what I'm going to demonstrate as emerging as the key points from our regulation. So I hope I dispel this myth about this Commission enthusiasm to make rules for others to enforce. Thanks very much for Jure and Dagmar for your excellent presentation and setting out some of the very key challenges and issues, and that saved me from going into them in my expose here. I'm just gonna see if this works. Yes, very well. Okay. So what I'm trying to set out here is a bit of the journey that we've made in platforms. Now, on the 6th of May last year, in the digital single market strategy, we set out an important section on platforms, and we committed to look into platforms as part of a comprehensive assessment. And we undertook a public consultation. We had very good responses. It was a very long consultation, hundreds of pages, and we made people work very hard over the autumn in putting very detailed answers to these questions. We had over 1,000 responses from all levels of industry, academia, member states, and it gave us a lot of information, but we supplemented this information expertise by some very focused workshops, and we were fortunate enough to have interaction with some top academics, some top professors from Harvard, MIT, France, the UK, and we had very intense interactions with them. We undertook some studies by the Joint Research Centre looking into platforms, and the Eurobarometer, and we drew heavily from this well of information, and this culminated in our communication on platforms, which, if you like, is the first deliverable of our comprehensive assessment on platforms, and that was part of a package of initiatives. So I will move to the next slide. Now, I don't want to go back to what was very, very beautifully explained by Jure and Dagmar, but this is our sort of Playmobil looking sort of graphic where we try to map out some of the types of platforms. I mean, one thing we learned, of course, in our investigation is the very diverse nature of platforms, and this forced us to retract any thinking that we may have of one horizontal, one-size-fits-all approach, which I think we've never had in the Commission anyway. I think from the beginning we were aware of the diversity of platforms, but at the same time aware of some common elements. So this is focusing on one type of platform. So this is the marketplace that we're all familiar with, the sort of the Amazon type platform. And as I was saying, that platforms seem to share some key characteristics. So while platforms can be very diverse in their nature, there are a number of commonalities. I'm not going to walk you through the wording here, but very interesting is their capacity, as we all know, to create and shape new markets. Some people call this disruptive. Some people think of disruption in a negative sense, others in a positive sense. And the way that they can extract value from interactions, and the way they can bring, I mean, we often talk about the multi-sided nature of platforms, the way they can bring suppliers, users, consumers, businesses at all levels, even governments, in whatever that platform may be. You may have these democratic interactions. I mean, this is one great thing about platforms is that they have been able to reach out to younger generations who have been somewhat become disenchanted by the conventional ways of interacting with society, and younger people have a stronger affiliation with the various applications and interactions that are made available and possible on their smartphones. Of course, data is probably the most important underpinning of platforms. It's the way they collect data, they gather data, they analyze data, they match data, and the data is the thing that creates these network effects. You know, the more users you have, the more data you have, each transaction, each interaction you have becomes more value, it becomes richer. It's drawing from a larger reserve of information, and obviously network capacity building. I think one of the key findings, probably the most important finding of the communication was the positive angle, the positive impact of platforms, really underlining their very strong, not only what they're delivering now, but their potential. And as you see on the top right-hand side there, looking into the future, the way platforms can help us bring enormous benefits for the Internet of Things, big data, artificial intelligence. This is also quite a contentious issue, but it will surely play an ever-increasing role in the fabric, in the material that makes platforms effective. We can look at the economic impact. I like this one, how we managed to quantify, I don't know how, the time saving in monetary terms by using search engines. And just people might think, oh, this is an Uber type employment reduction model. What we're talking about here is recruitment costs for employers. I mean, we always think about platforms being able to deliver efficiencies, but the more we can do interactively through technology can both speed up and enable and strengthen the quality of interactions, better matching supply with demand. I think, next one. That said, in Europe, we're possibly not the best performers. So while we acknowledge the benefits of platforms, they're not necessarily accruing in large measure to Europe, and our share of the market, if you can call it one large market as such, is only 4%. And clearly it doesn't compare very favorably with the US or indeed to Asia. And this is one of the reasons, another driver of the Commission's policy on platforms is trying to create this environment where platforms can flourish. So here we are. I mean, two elements to the Commission's approach, I think. One is these are the building blocks which can help platforms, give platforms that impetus. I mean, there are a number of financial instruments there as well as specific policy, and we talk about the DSM strategy in itself. Oops, there we go. Sorry, this is an Uber interactive slide. And so these are kind of the positive drivers, and on the right-hand side, we know that there are issues, that platforms do raise issues. Some of them were highlighted by the previous speakers, and they're set out in detail in our communication, and also our staff working document. And I know it's a slightly heavier technical set of underpinnings, but still very important to wade through if you've got the time. And so I think we can sum up the way the Commission has approached the problems, if you will, that I think one of the most important for me is the proportionality, is that where you think there is a problem where there's an evidence-based problem that has been, a problem that's been identified on the basis of evidence, it needs a proportionate approach. There are real risks with throwing the whole rule book at something that merits only very targeted regulatory or other solution. Of course, and I need to emphasize this, compliance. I mean, there are a lot of laws out there. There are a lot of protections out there within the EU framework and national frameworks, that already apply to platforms. There's the consumer protection rules, there's the whole competition framework, there's the data protection, GDPR. So there's already a lot out there for platforms to deal with. Where we find that there are problems, and this is really kind of the starting point for the Commission, it's this problem-driven approach. We don't want to legislate or regulate in any way unless we have finally divined what the problem is. So that's what's going to be our starting approach if there's a problem. And then we have to ask ourselves, how do we deal with it, this problem? And the first stop is, what about our existing frameworks? What's out there already? What do they have to comply with already? If we find that there's insufficiencies or gaps, then maybe we need to move on to another level. And our first response is to get industry themselves, if it's industry which is the cause of the problem, to come up with solutions. So there's a slight sort of disagreement, I think, with one of the slides of Jagman, Juraj, and Dagmar, was this dichotomy between regulation and no regulation, this sort of this free-for-all, this laissez-faire, and hard and fast rules. I think there is a middle way, and I think that picks up the theme from some of your other slides of we have to be able to respond dynamically to market conditions and developments, and that's one of the big merits of co-regulation. So getting industry to be involved with governments, regulators, that they can better respond dynamically and keep to, so I've got 2 minutes there, so I'll whiz through to the end. And so don't damage innovation and still respond to the problems. And I will just whiz to the next one quite conveniently. So I won't go into these in detail, but for reasons of time, but we focused our approach, if you like, as a compass rather than a regulatory imperative around 4 clusters of ideas. So this was the level playing field where services or similar or comparable or competing, they should be treated the same way, irrespective of the means or the nature of delivery. Clearly, as platforms become larger and more important in our lives, they need to live up to their new responsibilities. Of course, a fundamental underpinning of platforms for society and business in the economy is ensuring this trust and ensuring that there's fairness in relations. One particular aspect that the Commission has honed in on is the fairness in B2B relations. You'll see there's quite a chunk devoted to this, both in our staff working document and in the communication itself. And we'll be looking over the next sort of 9 months or so more closely into relations between platforms and suppliers, platforms and businesses. And then probably one of the most important things is how we can make the platform market grow. I mean, we all know this is a data market. We want to achieve fluid data markets. We have to think carefully about ownership, access, all these elements that can really help the European economy in platforms grow and achieve its full potential. I'm going to stop there, and I've just left you with a few buzzwords which have been resonating in our heads, certainly at the Commission, as we've been seeking to formulate the policy. Thank you.